I now have the pleasure of introducing Dr. Adi. Dr. Adi is an assistant professor of mathematics education in the mathematics department at the University of Arizona, where he regularly teaches calculus, linear algebra, and number theory. He received his undergraduate degree and master's degree in mathematics and a PhD in mathematics education from University of California, Berkeley. His research lies in the intersection of mathematical cognition, equity, and undergraduate mathematics. His work focuses on understanding ways that deficit social narratives, along with our perspectives on knowledge and learning, impact the way that we look at mathematical sense-making by students of color. He's interested in ways that students can make sense of abstract mathematical topics using knowledge from their everyday lives. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Adi. Hi y'all, how you doing?
Sorry.
You know me by name, so that's cool. All right, hey, so thank you, Cameron and Terrace, for inviting me to share my story. Model minority myth. Unfortunately, I'm a walking model minority. I'm a math professor in the math department, but we'll get there. Okay, so I'm going to tell you a story about challenging my deficit story. And I thought, thank you for the wonderful introduction, but I thought another way of introducing myself. You remember last year when there was that thing that went viral that everybody did on Facebook where they post a picture of themselves from like 10 years ago and then like your current picture? Do you remember this? Yeah. Did anybody do it? Nobody? Y'all better keep up. So that's my photo. Y'all, that photo on the left from 1990 is what I described as I should have known. I should have known that I was born fabulous. So yes, I identify as a queer Asian man. And as you can see, that's the other photo is taken at the end of my undergraduate career. And academia has dimmed the light of the fabulousness that I was. And if you don't recognize the interior of that room, that's because that photo was taken in Indonesia. So I was born and raised in Indonesia. I'm an immigrant to the United States. And so I want to tell you a little bit about my story, my journey to becoming a math professor here at the university. So this is my academic journey. So I arrived my junior year of high school, I guess. And, oh right, so I tried to apply to college from high school. I didn't know how to do that. So I applied to one college, and I did not get it. So I went to a community college, and you know the whole thing, and this is a pattern that you're hearing from everybody today. But I transferred, ultimately transferred, and then I remember this is a memory that is really painful. But I was taking a math class, and on the first exam, it was really, really hard. Like I thought I had a handle on it, and then it was really hard. I studied really hard, and I failed so bad. I failed so bad that when I went to office hours afterwards, the professor was like, you know, with other students, I would recommend that you stay in class, but since you failed it that bad, I think I recommend that you just drop the class. And as a math major, oh, by the way, I wanted to be a psychology major. I wanted to be a psychologist. That's what my dream was. And then math tempted me, and here I am. But as a math major, I was so kind of defeated. I felt so defeated. And I remember walking, and I remember, oh no, now I have to change different things. And so on. But anyway, moved on from there, and I was part of an undergraduate research program, and they encouraged me to go to grad school. Nobody in my family ever went to grad school. I didn't know what that was. So I applied to grad school. And whereas all my friends got accepted to all these different universities and got funding opportunities, and they paid you to go to grad school, by the way, I got into just one. I applied to 3. I didn't get into the other 2. I just got into 1. And then in grad school, one of the things that you have to do is you have to take these series of exams. So the first year exam is to show that you are really qualified to continue on in your education, what we call our preliminary exam. Well, guess what happened with that exam? I failed my first year exam. And I was the only one from my cohort who took that exam and failed it, so I had to take it again the second year. So, all right, survived that one. And then later on, before you write your dissertation, you have to take another exam called the comprehensive exam. This is when you show your expertise of the area that you want to write a dissertation in. Well, I barely passed that exam. It was so bad that my professor, my advisor, after the exam was over, started crying and told me, "Don't you ever do that to me again." Because she wasn't sure that I was going to survive that exam, right? So, okay. Sadly, I fell into depression. All these fights, all the ways that I fought and all that stuff kind of led me into depression. I couldn't wake up in the morning, I couldn't go to work, I couldn't do anything. I then went into therapy to just figure things out. Well, I continued on, and then I wrote my dissertation. But at the end, I'm not exactly proud of that dissertation that I wrote. I did it, not proud of it. And this is how I defended myself throughout all of this. The first thing is, with that first year exam after I passed it, the second year, the thing that I kept saying is, how could I have known that? It seems like everybody, all my classmates knew how it was supposed to go, how you were supposed to study, but as a first generation, as somebody who doesn't have a parents that I could talk to about this, a lot of the times it just feels like everybody knows it but you. That's what it felt. And every time somebody says, you can't do this, or I think you should drop it, or you're not good enough, or whatever, my instinct is, you know what? I'm going to prove you wrong. I'm going to show you that I can. The other thing that I did was I began to compare myself to other people. I started looking down on people who are worse off than me. Hey, at least I'm not that person who's struggling even worse than I am. But that also means I'm not that person up there who had it all together. And so I thought, you know what? This whole thing is unfair, and I have to fight everything. I have to fight. And I have to expose how unfair this whole thing is. Well, this is what actually happened. I got really worn down by the fight. Kept fighting, but it just wore me out. And I became fixated on these deficit messages, and others did too. I became positioned as the struggling student. By my peers, by my professors, I became that student. Ultimately, as much as I fought it, I started believing that I was not good enough. But fortunately, change did happen. And how did it happen? Well, humility and acceptance. I finally told myself, you know what? Maybe you do suck. And that's okay. But we're going to get better. We're going to try harder. We're going to work on it each day. We're going to accept that we suck right now, but we're going to get better. So I focus on my own growth. I focus on getting better for myself. I stop comparing myself to other people. Other people can move like 200 miles an hour. I don't care. Even if I just learned one thing today that I did not know yesterday, that's good enough for me. I'm just going to focus on that. And the other thing that happened was, it turns out, I did not know this, and some of you might already know this, but I was privileged enough where I get to a point in my life. And by the way, these things are things that I still do today as a professor. Sometimes I say to myself, I guess I suck today, and I'm going to keep getting better. I've also started surrounding myself with really, really good people. And these are the people who are not going to criticize me. These are the people who are going to support me. These are the people who know when I'm struggling and having a hard time, they're not going to point out, yeah, you really do suck. Instead, they say, but you're really good at this. Oh, you're still working on that. You got better at that thing. And so now my circle is of people who are supportive of me. So all this personal development ultimately led to my changing or shifting my research and my teaching. There you go. So I spent a lot of times now talking and thinking about this anti-deficit approach for mathematics. And what that means is, how can we acknowledge that these deficit stories that we tell ourselves, that other people tell about us, actually matter? And how do we begin to challenge these things? And so these things, that quote that I folded, this happens all the time, just because the way I dress, people don't think that I'm smart. And this came from a Latinx woman in my class, in my number theory course. And one day, and to describe her, she's awesome. She showed up to class every day. She's like, full makeup on, like hoop earrings, like clothes are, good, right? And like, she's so proud of that, right? But because of the way that she dressed, one day she had to leave the class, in the middle of class, crying outside. And I found out later on that day, in that office hours, that the reason why she did that was because she was so tired of her roommates dismissing her idea. And this was an idea that she already verified with me in office hours. So she knew it was correct, right? But she kept getting dismissed, and the reason why she got upset is not just because of that one instance, it's this accumulation of every single day that she got dismissed just because of the way that she looked, right? So my research and my teaching now pays attention to those things. How can math teachers, how can I as a math professor recognize your excellence in the classroom in the face of this deficit narratives and stereotypes, okay? Alright, so, personal takeaways. The stories that we tell matter, the stories that we tell about ourselves, the stories that we tell about other people, the stories that we tell about our students, for those of you who are educators in this room. And this journey of mine has been a journey in becoming more authentically myself while existing in a space that is not necessarily designed for people. Yes, I am Asian at the end of the day. Have other identities that are hidden, right? Where the space is not created for them. Humility, but not doubt. Yeah? How many of you watched the Emmys? Billy Porter? Anybody? Acceptance speech? Alright, never mind. We all have the right to exist in this world. Be humble, but never question that you belong here. Never question that you have the right for an education, that you have the right to pass a math class, that your professor are there for you. And let's start writing our own counter stories. Okay? Counter stories, basically the opposite story. Speaking of, if you allow me, I did arrive my junior year of high school. Actually, I was placed in an ESL class, an English language learner. I moved to the US not knowing how to speak English, so I was in an ESL class, and then first month, I moved myself out of that class. I said, I want to be in an English class. I don't know how to, but I'm going to do it. And I successfully moved myself out of an ESL class to be in a regular English class. I actually graduated with honors from high school. I graduated with honors from community college. The best experience of my life is going to a community college. I got a BA in math with honors from UC Berkeley. it was hard. It was really hard. I'm not going to joke with you. It was hard. There was a lot of praying. There was a lot of praying at UC Berkeley, trying to figure that out. In the midst of all the depression, in the midst of all the struggle, I did get my master's degree from UC as well. I actually ended up being the only one in my program to actually graduate from the PhD program. Everybody else dropped out. I was not proud of how I did it, meaning like the quality of dissertation, but I still done graduated. And ultimately, I landed a tenure track job here.
So I guess it wasn't that bad.
This is how I retell my story. Yeah. And remember that photo from earlier? Of my little self, my little fabulous self? I guess I figured out.
Thank you all.